Welcome to California Working Families Party's Governor Series, where we are interviewing candidates who are seeking our party's endorsement for governor in 2026. My name is Jane Kim. I'm the California Director with Working Families Party, and we are so excited that all of you are here to join us today. We are kicking off these interviews as a chance for our members to hear directly from candidates about their values, their vision, and how they plan to stand with working families as governor. For those of you that are new to Working Families Party, we are a party of everyday people, community leaders, neighborhood leaders, organizers, and elected officials that believe that working people can govern, not just billionaires and billionaire corporations. We are building a party that is serious about securing governing power. And we believe that this is something that we can accomplish here in the great state of California. I want to take a moment to give a shout out to all of our live watch parties that are happening across the state, from Los Angeles, Bakersfield, San Diego, San Francisco, Oakland, and more. And you'll be seeing some of them tonight with questioners that we'll have from some of these regions. If you missed our first two interviews with State Superintendent of Public Instruction, Tony Thurmond, or Congresswoman Katie Porter, we have a link in the chat for you to view them as well. Guiding tonight's conversation is Kimmy Lee, one of the officers of our California Working Families Party Steering Committee and Bay Rising Action Executive Director. I want to thank Kimmy and Controller Betty Yee for joining us tonight for our conversation. Over to you, Kimmy.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to our Working Families Party Meet the Candidates series. My name's Kimmy Lee. I'm the Executive Director of Bay Rising Action, and I'm part of the statewide WFP Steering Committee. Tonight, I'll be moderating tonight's conversation. We have some great guests that are going to be coming in to ask some questions. So these interviews are a part of our statewide endorsement process. The goal is simple: to give our members and leaders the opportunity to get to know the candidates who have applied for our endorsement. This is a chance to hear directly from them around their vision for California and the issues that matter to working families. As Jane mentioned, we're also hosting watch parties all over the state. And so it's great. You'll see some speakers that are going to have a crowd behind them. We've got some folks coming in right now into Oakland. So very excited to be here together. And so as part of this process, also just to explain that we reached out to all of the top candidates for governor. And the three candidates that you see in this series, Tony Thurmond, Katie Porter, and Betty Yee, are the ones that completed our questionnaire and chose to participate in the process with us. After these interviews, we'll be holding an official WFP forum in early 2026, where members from across California will have a chance to weigh in on who helped shape Working Families Party to ultimately endorse a governor. So thank you for being part of this process. We're really excited to have you here, and you're helping us to build a stronger, more representative movement for working people across California. All right, so now we want to welcome you. So Controller Yee, I think you're here. I don't see you. Oh, okay. You're not here. Oh, there you are. Hello. Okay, sorry. The Zoom magic. There you go.
That's okay.
Controller Yee, actually, I don't know if you remember this, but I met you 25 years ago in Sacramento doing the Asian Youth Leadership Program. So
I do.
It's so exciting.
It's great to see you.
It's great to see you. Great to see you running for governor. So the first thing that we wanted you to do tonight is just introduce yourself. Some people are meeting you for the first time tonight. So if you could just introduce yourself and share your journey into public service. You have 2 minutes.
Great. Thank you, Kimmy. And thank you, Jane, and everyone with Working Families Party for the opportunity. My name is Betty Yee, and Kimmy, please call me Betty. I'm not controller anymore, so I'm happy to have you just call me Kimmy. Call me Betty. I am a first-generation Chinese American, born to immigrant parents from China, and daughter of immigrants, second oldest of 6 children in my family. And you know what I would say in terms of my story, very common with, I think, other immigrant families in California, sharing a room with 3 siblings growing up, and a product of our public schools, and really just dreaming big dreams for my family to, just be able to be successful. And that dream was really what made me a fighter, because, nothing's given and, nothing was easy, but yet, everything was about, how we build community together. I grew up in San Francisco, and my first foray into politics was, when you're a child to immigrant parents who don't speak English, you become an instant advocate. And so I was an advocate for my parents before the San Francisco Unified School District when my younger sister was going to be part of the first class to be bused across the city, and made a statement when I was 13 years old to represent the Chinese American families. There were only four in the West Side, if you can believe it, in San Francisco at that time. And just to say the busing program would create hardship if an emergency should rise with our children, we'd have to shut down our small business for a day, lose a day of earnings, and be on transportation for well over 2 hours to bring our child home. And that experience has been etched in my mind ever since, that I was a voice for someone. And when I think about politics, it's about how do we really have the most diverse array of voices to come together to meet some of our most tough challenges, and particularly the voices who live these challenges every day. And that's something that I think we haven't done well in terms of how we govern in the 21st century. So I began my elective office running for the State Board of Equalization. I was not a legislator. That's the tax board, which at the time that I served for the 10 years was the tax appeals body. I've taken on multinational corporations to be sure they pay their fair share of taxes. These are tax proceedings, and so we were compelling them to pay their fair share and have done that successfully. And then ran for controller of the state, which is the state's chief financial officer, where we're responsible for oversight of the state's finances to be sure that we had good financial condition to give people confidence about our fiscal and financial situation, so investors would be comfortable investing in California. And so we would also be able to balance our budgets going forward, knowing that we had good cash management and were able to pay the bills for California. Look, I've been really someone who's advocated for working families all my life. I come from one. It's, I think, one of the things that I would say that I'm most proud of with respect to who I am is that I never forget where I come from. And so I think with that, I'm just going to leave that introduction there, and happy to just dive into a conversation.
Well, thank you so much. It was great to hear your backstory. So at a recent candidate forum, you actually described yourself as not the flashiest of candidates. So in a state as large and media driven as California, where big personalities often dominate the political spotlight, how do you plan to break through that and gain traction in this race? You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. So I am not a celebrity personality, and that's exactly right. But you know what I know how to do? I know how to balance budgets, and I know how to win elections. My first election for statewide office in 2014 for state controller was reminds me of this race: open seat, wide open. And yet, what we know, and certainly the polling has is bearing this out, is that people are looking for a change. They want someone who can actually deliver results. They want someone who is a problem solver. And I'm also running a grassroots campaign. I committed myself to really being the best in terms of knowing who and what I'm going to be representing. And so my grassroots campaign has entailed being in communities and spending anywhere from 3 to 5 days in a community to talk about things like housing affordability, to talk about economic opportunities, to talk about if we had to reimagine our healthcare system, what would it look like to be sure that we're meeting the needs of the community, and just deep conversations like that, because we may be in the business of having to do all of that, going forward. And when I think about running a grassroots campaign, it's also about how do we elevate the voices of communities so that they know that they have agency in the future of California. And so we are going to win this race by essentially just leaning in on my experience, but also talking about how we deliver results and talking about really a different direction for California. When I think about all the communities that I've been to, and certainly my own community, the AAPI community, and so many of our communities of color, there has been just so much that has been done to harm our communities just by way of policies. And I don't believe that people who make the policies even intended that to be the case, but we're living with all of the essentially, harmful policies that have not allowed us to move forward, have not allowed workers now to be able to, just work hard and to play by the rules and to get ahead, and have not really essentially been able to be realistic about the solutions that communities need. And so that's what we're leaning on. I will say that our internal polling suggests that people want that. and we're going to work hard. And I also believe that there is way too much money in politics. We're going to raise enough because we know how to, well, I'm a controller. I know how to how to use money efficiently, but it is about just really running a people campaign, a people-centered campaign, because I'm running to roll up my sleeves to do the work. I have no interest in being president of the United States, so this is all that I'm leaning in on and really getting into really reaching into the hopes and anxieties of Californians throughout the state to have them articulate to me, and certainly to me as hopefully the next governor, about what we need to do to make the investments to finally uplift all communities in California.
Great, thank you so much. So now we're going to move across the state, and we actually have Sean Ella Rivera, who's a San Diego council member, who's going to ask you the next question.
All right. Hi, Betty.
Hi,
Thank
Sean.
you for doing this. In so many ways, your story is like you're like the embodiment of the California dream. I really appreciate you sharing that. And we know that it's more and more difficult for people to see themselves being able to live the same sort of dream that you have. And that's because of largely because of the cost of housing. So
Yes.
Working Families Party state legislators, assembly members Alex Lee and State Senator Aisha Wahab have introduced legislation to propose social housing models focused on permanent affordability, mixed income units, and strong resident protections. So if you were elected governor, what would be your vision and plan for supporting or scaling social housing in California? And specifically, how would you fund it?
Sure. We have, first of all, I support what both Senator Wahab and Assemblymember Lee are doing. We have to have all housing options on the table because, frankly, we're not building housing to meet the needs of many, many Californians, affordability being a piece of it. You know, when you think about fundamentally what housing is really driven by, it's two things: it's land and finance. So, you know, where we build, how we optimize where we build is really critical. And I think there's a lot that we can think about. I like the alternative housing models that really are are showing some success, particularly things like land trusts and then looking at cooperative ownership models. I think all of these options have to be at the table. With respect to financing, I think we need to look at how we use our financing tools to actually help us sustain affordability with our housing stock. And with that, I think it's also about, and let me just back up. I don't ever want to forget that 44% of Californians are renters, and we have to be mindful that we've got to stabilize the situation for renters. They are truly just steps away from becoming unhoused if we are not stabilizing, you know, their situation. Over half of that 44% obviously rent burden, paying more than well over 30% of their income on rent. But I think all these issues have to come to the fore. And the way that I want to look at housing, Sean, and that I talk about housing is that it's just not about housing. It's about housing to what end? We really need to look at how we're going to build economically and environmentally sustainable communities. That this is not just about, you know, putting up housing units, but it's about how they're going to be there for the long term to attract business development, which actually the state can have a really big influence on through incentivizing business development and creating those opportunities for economic mobility right in the communities where we want people to be able to live. And so this is a more holistic approach, but all of these housing options have to be on the table.
Thank you for that. And then I just have you mentioned renters, and that's a huge issue in our state. More and more people are renting because they can't see themselves being able to own a home. So what would you do to ensure long-term affordability and protections for renters, such as just cause eviction, rent stability, and you started to get into this a little bit, public ownership models?
Right, exactly. So I think we have to look at a continuum of what we do with respect to housing. As the only candidate running for governor who supported the rent control measure on the ballot last year, I think that's essential. Doesn't make sense to me, just from a pure governance standpoint, that the level of government, local government that has the ability, that has the authority to approve housing development, doesn't have the tools in terms of how it's going to deal with rent control. And I think those two have to be married. Yes, we're going to build more housing stock, but frankly, we're going to build more housing stock that actually is going to help meet the needs of renters. And I think we need to look at it as, like I said, a continuum of where we're looking at first, we stabilize the rental situation, and then look at ways that we create pathways for home ownership through some of these alternative ownership models. And I think that is the way that we talk about building economically sustainable communities that then can also be there for generations to come. And you know, when things are so fragmented in terms of our housing policy, there's no accountability. and I've said this to our current governor, that we don't have a statewide housing strategy. We have a whole fragmentation of policies that try to attack any one particular issue, but this has to be a comprehensive approach to how we look at finally helping so many Californians achieve, home ownership, and to be able to hopefully still look at home ownership as a path to creating intergenerational wealth.
All right, you have that nice time's up music. So,
Okay.
Just remember-
Thank you, Betty.
Thank you, Sean.
So next up, we're going to actually move to the LA Watch Party, and we have Bryant Odega, who is a public school teacher from UTLA. So I'm going to pass it to Bryant.
Hi, Brian.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you.
Okay, wonderful. So California has 5.8 million students in our TK to 12 public education system. Yet, despite being the fourth largest economy in the world, California ranks 21st in spending on a per pupil basis. Prop 98, which established a baseline of funding to our K-12 public schools and community colleges, providing 40 cents of every tax dollar of our general fund, is not enough to fully invest in California students. As governor, what is your plan to make California a top 10 public education system? And what revenue solutions will you fight for as governor?
Sure. Thank you, Brian, for the question. This is one of those things, and by the way, we've dropped back down to the fifth largest economy in the world, so we're losing pace here. We have to prioritize education. It is foundational to everything that we talk about in terms of where our economy is going with respect to where people are going to be finding economic opportunities. And there is so much changing in the world to where I believe that our public schools really need to be in a position to be as ready as possible to um, really help orient and develop our discerning citizens here in California, but also how do we make sure that we're preparing the workforce for today and tomorrow as well. I think a lot of what schools are responsible for now is just beyond just basic classroom instruction. You have a lot on your plate with respect to mental health and just nutrition, a lot of these other areas that I hope we can look at other revenue sources for. And right now we're just a target with the federal government on some of the food assistance programs and the like. But all to say that I think we need to uplift just the core function of public education and the instructional responsibility of it. I would look at this is something that is a statewide benefit. I would be looking to be sure that we continue to have a progressive tax system that prioritizes public education, which is foundational to everything that we do here in California. Every issue we want to tackle, it comes down to education and being sure that we have a California where our young people and frankly lifelong learners as well are equipped to be able to really see their place in terms of how they can be a part of solving some of our most challenging problems. So I would look
Thank
at
you.
certainly looking at being sure that our corporations are paying their fair share. And frankly, I'm going to be sure that we're enforcing the tax laws that we have now, because I don't believe that we're fully doing that, to be sure that we're holding our corporations and wealthy Californians accountable. And I want tax policies to be smart, to where we're not unintentionally creating policies where it's easy for billionaires and corporations to just leave the state. They have options, they know how to do that, but we've got to be sure that we continue to have a progressive tax system that puts the responsibility where it belongs.
All right.
Thank you, Betty.
So next question is actually from Anna Estrada, who's with Project Superbloom, and she's in San Fernando. So Anna.
Hi, just a little bit about Project Superbloom PAC. We're California's only PAC founded and led by young people, and we take great pride in offering paid opportunities for young people to get hands-on experience in politics, specifically in the state legislature. So happy to be here with you today. And just to clarify, I'm from the San Fernando Valley. So my question for you today is, as you know, California has faced rising costs related to climate change, including food, housing, insurance, and disaster recovery expenses. At the same time, the state has continued to permit some oil production under Governor Newsom's administration.
Yeah.
So I was just curious, how do you think California should balance its energy policies with the need to address the impacts of climate change and affordability?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you, Anna. Um, a couple things. So I believe climate change, our climate crisis needs to be centered in almost everything that we do. Because if we are not looking at how we're preparing for the worst effects of climate change, by the time it becomes a crisis, it will crowd out funding for everything else that we care about in the budget. And so when I say we have to center it, we have to talk about climate in terms of how we build sustainable housing. We have to talk about in terms of how we have, climate education and involving our young people. We need to talk about in terms of the type of transportation systems we see ourselves, really relying on in the future. So we have to talk about it in terms of preparedness, emergency response and preparedness. And wildfires are going to be the new normal. And how do we start to protect ourselves against sea level rise? So it's got to be embedded in everything that we do, but really bringing back a culture of preparedness so that all communities are informed about what they can do and what the state can certainly help them do to be prepared for the worst of the climate effects. I think with respect to how I look at this issue of oil. Look, we've got ambitious climate goals in California. It's great to have ambitious goals, but if you don't have a plan about how to get there, we're not going to get there. And that's exactly what's been missing. You don't flip a switch to get to, a renewable energy economy. It's a transition. It's a transition that has to be responsible. We should be accelerating renewable energy sources from all sources and being sure that every community has the ability to be a part of that energy transition. But we also needed to have a plan to talk about how do we do this transition and at the same time begin to be less reliant on fossil fuels. And what does that timeline look like? What does it mean in terms of jobs and people working in these industries? What does it mean in terms of new jobs being developed? What does it mean in terms of being accountable for emissions reductions? I mean, all of this really should have been mapped out as we have this goal. The idea that we're going to be not relying on gas-powered cars by 2035, I'm afraid that we may not get there just because how do we get there when we're not even looking at how we're going to have enough of the source materials for batteries and electric vehicles and the charging stations. So all to say that the public deserves to see a transition plan and how we're going to meet interim targets between now and 2035 or 2045, depending on which goal we're talking about, and how we're going to actually help people really see that this is economically in their benefit. So how are we creating the jobs? How are we helping communities create resilience, both economically and environmentally? And also looking at how we are going to create better health outcomes because of reduced emissions. So it's accountability.
All right, thank you. So our next question is from Nina Long, who's with AAPI Force. She's the policy manager.
Thanks, Kimmy. Hi, Betty. I'm with APIs for Civic Empowerment, or API Force, and we're a statewide API power building org, as well as a part of the WFP State Steering Committee. My next question is about revenue. So despite the ongoing federal budget attacks by the Trump administration, as well as our super tough state deficit forecast, the governor has been unwilling to consider taxes on large corporations in the 1%. Can you tell us about your plans to generate progressive revenue? And can you say whether you support a 1% wealth tax on extreme wealth defined as $50 million per individual and above?
Mm-hmm. I do support a wealth tax. I mean, it's the most progressive we can, be with our tax system. But I'm also sanguine about the fact that those who would be, who we would expect to pay the tax have every wherewithal to leave the state. And so I'm definitely would pursue it, but I want to be realistic about what the consequences might be. The other thing that I really think about, and this is if we ever really get into a situation of where housing really can be an asset that and property taxes and income taxes are our progressive taxes here in California, but we have volatility in our income tax, and so I want to be sure that we are doing everything we can to make those who are generating the most revenue to pay their share, to pay frankly more than their share because they are generating more income. But I think there is a way to look at progressive taxes also with respect to how we can bring the property tax to be a much more essential revenue source. Split roll, we lost at the ballot a few years ago in terms of looking at assessing commercial property differently. Obviously, commercial property excluding multifamily housing. But we also know now that a lot of Class A commercial buildings are underwater, and so I'm not sure what that would generate. But I would look at every revenue source and look at the mix of revenues that we need to have to be sure that we have stability, but also being sure that we continue to have a progressive tax system. So yes, I would support a wealth tax, but I also want to look at the entire system to be sure that we are getting the most benefit out of it. If you're looking for revenue, frankly, the best way to get revenue is from our regressive tax, and that is sales tax. One of the few large states that does not tax services, but we also know that the sales tax falls heavily on low-income people. So, but if we were to look at that within the whole mix of taxes, there might be an opportunity to do that, or to look at generating a sales tax from services that are mostly consumed by upper income earners.
All right, so our next question is from Rachel Hernandez, who is the Riverbank Mayor and Central Valley Member Rep.
Hi, Rachel.
Oh, hi, Betty. I am going to pull up the question here. It's great seeing you. And my name is Rachel Hernandez. I am the newly elected, I'll say that until the end of the year, mayor
Yes.
for the city of Riverbank in the Central
Congratulations.
Valley. And you have come to visit here the Central Valley, Modesto, quite a few times, so I really appreciate that. And that being said, the Central Valley is typically what we feel an afterthought in much of the statewide campaigns and policies. In 2016 and 2020, many of our congressional districts voted for Joe Biden, but flipped to Trump in 2024. And from local to state legislature and federal at a congressional level, I personally am represented by Republican, pretty conservative elected officials. So how do you plan to engage with the Central Valley or continue to engage with the Central Valley voters? How will you prioritize our region-specific issues such as pesticide regulations that harm workers and children? But as you know, agriculture is the lifeline of our area.
Right.
And how will you access to clean air and water as well?
Yeah, thank you, Rachel, for the question. The Central Valley, I always talk about the Central Valley as being the heart of the state. And that, like with every living organism, we need to take care of the heart. And I look at the communities that are in the Central Valley that I have tremendous fondness for, because it is really a lot of grit to get up every day and to think about, just all of the challenges that you face. Here's what I would do. One, I think there is tremendous, tremendous economic opportunity in the Central Valley that is not agriculture. And actually, it's about all the ill effects of agriculture when you think about it. When you think about what's happening with water in California, all the ill effects around water manifest themselves in the Central Valley. And so we have to do better in terms of how we take care of our resources there. We have to do better in terms of economic opportunities there that I would frankly center on climate technology. We have all these rollbacks from the federal government on environmental protections, but I do think that California can continue to lead as being the climate industrial leader of the United States and throughout the world, because we have the technology here and we know how to deploy it. And we also know how to deploy it for more sustainable and regenerative agriculture. And so I would say water technology, we can look at certainly the tools that can be used in terms of how we can support more sustainable agriculture. And these are the things that I want to uplift, because we see that the ways that dollars are being allocated oftentimes is based on population. And so the Central Valley doesn't necessarily win out on that. But where you can win out is on need and impacts. And that's what we need to look at, is like, you look at whether it's air quality, whether it's looking at chronic health conditions, whatever the measure is, we have to think about different ways of getting resources to the Central Valley and other parts of the state where they're not getting the funding that is actually meeting the needs that have to be addressed. So I would actually call that out, because I think our funding formulas need to change. They're outdated if they're just based on population and don't take into account all of the impacts that are being borne by communities that either are experiencing growth or maybe not experiencing growth, but have been the bearers of the disproportionate burdens that have been placed on them because of our shifting our policies shifting the burden to our low-income communities and our underserved communities.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, so our next question actually is about immigration, and I'm just going to go ahead and ask it. So California is a sanctuary state. From
Yes.
farm workers to engineers, immigrants are integrated in the communities and the economy. Within the current administration, threatening to punish our state for our inclusive policy, what concrete steps would you take as governor to defend California's ability to attend school, seek medical care, report crime safely without risking deportation or family separation?
Sure.
What specific tools or policies would you use to ensure local law enforcement doesn't cooperate with federal immigration raids?
Sure. Well, first of all, I would look at standing up more community-based organizations that can actually be right at the forefront of protecting our immigrant communities. And I will say that we know, because one of my competitors is a county sheriff who is probably going to be the one who will be most compliant with the federal rates right now. So what I would like to do is to actually empower local communities in terms of how we can provide for our immigrant communities and being sure that we have the protections. And I would frankly deploy our own state law enforcement to protect our own people. So we're not aiding certainly the federal mass immigration effort, but we are protecting, our own priorities here in California. The other thing I would do is I just want to back up because I want to be sure that people understand, because people do not understand this when I speak about this. The $45 billion to expand detention facility, that's our taxpayer money. That's our taxpayer money that Congress has decided to prioritize expanding detention facilities. And the fact that people are being arrested and, there's no due process and their constitutional rights are being violated, we're paying for that. And how good do we feel about that? And then the additional ICE enforcement to the tune of $170 billion. This is at the expense of, tax cuts for the rich and corporations, and also at the expense of healthcare cuts and food assistance cuts and so many other cuts that we are going to have to endure as a state and for all of our communities. I just want to name that because nobody is making that connection, and I think we need to speak more about that. But I would like to look at working with other states as well, who are going to help push back against this mass immigration effort by the federal government, and then also to employers. I mean, a lot of employers are not stepping out because they're fearful. But frankly, their bottom line is going to be hit pretty quickly. And so I would look to also get our employers involved to say, look, you are hurting our economy. California is an economy that contributes to the rest of this nation. And if California goes, the rest of the nation will suffer. And so I hope our employers would also be stepping up to help us protect our immigrant community members as well.
Thank you. All right, so I have a couple of questions from folks in the audience right now.
Sure.
So I'm going to read those from you, so pardon me while I read, but would you oppose public funds being used to implement AI automation that would remove good-paying union jobs in healthcare, construction, education, etc., from our Central Coast member rep, Arthur?
Yes. First of all, let me talk about AI, and thank you for the question. Look, I'm really happy that you're all here because you are really the backbone of our economy. And when I think about AI and just all of the threats, and it's not to say there aren't any benefits to AI, there's plenty of them, but how we deploy AI has to be worker-centric. Workers know best how to deploy AI in ways that can create benefits, not risks. And if we're going to leave it to companies to do, they do not know how to deploy it for good, and certainly not to get the benefits that I think we all can see through the work that we do. We are going to, the next governor's watch will include having to think about, yes, how AI is deployed. And frankly, I'm open to having AI be part of what state workers use to be able to, obviously do their work. But if we see jobs displaced, and when we see Mark Benioff with Salesforce talk about laying off 4,000 people because of AI, and that's just one company, we're going to see more of this. And I do think that the next governor is going to have to think about, and I've already proposed that we need to think about a different social insurance program that is about AI, because what's the long game for AI? Short-term profits, and then probably, leaving, government to be the backstop of how we're going to really support workers who are displaced. And we're already seeing workers displaced. College graduates can't get entry-level jobs because there are lesser numbers of them and they're competing with workers who've been displaced. And so this is where we have to be really ready. I always say the role of government has to be really being proactive about understanding the economic vulnerabilities that Californians are going to face, and so that we can start to put protections in place. And when I talk about a social insurance program, it is not just about guaranteed income. It's about the training and the retraining and what are the jobs that are going to be there for people to transition into. And that has, and we should have already been in the business of providing a universal level foundation of AI literacy for all Californians already, because if people don't know what's in their lives right now, they're probably going to be exploited by it. And so it's got to be worker centric. It's got to be informed by what workers know, where the benefits are going to be. And we've got to do everything to stave off companies making those calls.
Thank you. All right, I got another member question from Sam in Los Angeles. As a member of the Higher Education Board, what is the responsibility of the UC, CSU, and community colleges for defending free speech and academic inequity?
As a public higher education institution, that should be front and center in terms of what they do. With respect to academic freedom, with respect to freedom of speech. And this is something that we're seeing right now with respect to what this Trump administration is doing, trying to shut that down with funding cuts that have been threatened and real. And what we have to do here in California is to be sure that particularly our public higher education institutions continue to be the home for academic freedom, for free speech, for where liberalism is born, where different points of views can be shared and expressed. It's how we actually are able to have Californians be discerning about who's going to represent their best interests. And so when that is under attack, to me, that is a core of democracy. And so we have got to protect our higher education institutions and be sure that they continue to be at the forefront of what it means to be a part of a democracy.
All right, I have one more question from audience member here in Oakland. So Barisha asks, will you continue the executive order on the death penalty or convince the California legislature to abolish it?
I will. We know just a lot of the issues with our carceral systems that really have done wrong. And frankly, just one wrong conviction is enough. And I do think, and I've been involved just on my own, on a personal level, with a number of initiatives that have been about how we invest in holistic reentry programs. They work. And they result in zero level recidivism. And it is the humane thing to do. And I will continue that. And I know that the law has to catch up. I know the governor has declared a moratorium, but I would be out in front with respect to abolishing the death penalty with a ballot initiative.
All right, well, thank you. Those are our more serious questions. And now we are in the lightning round stage of the interview. So you have 1 minute or less to answer questions. First, what is your most played artist on Spotify or Apple this year?
Oh gosh, you really want to know? It is Earth, Wind, and Fire, because I've had like this little like nostalgia thing going on. And because some of their band members are like dying, and it was like just such a really transformative part of my growing up. Yeah.
All right, nothing to be ashamed about. That's great music. What's your favorite national or state park in California?
National or state park?
Yeah.
Point Reyes National Seashore. It has all different kinds of topography. It's got some history. It's got some environmental issues that have become front and center recently. When I was in college, I worked for the National Park Service, and it breaks my heart seeing what's happening with our national parks now. But I was a writer for the National Park Service, so I did have the opportunity to visit all the national parks in the western region of the United States. But Point Reyes, I think about just because it is something that is really something to behold on the coast. Yeah.
Nice, Bay Area. Okay, Warriors or Valkyries?
Oh gosh, Valkyries. Hey man, it's time for the women to like, get in there and like be equally recognized and hopefully equally
Yay.
compensated at some point. Yeah.
All right. What's your superpower, the thing you do better than most, and what's your kryptonite?
Ah, my superpower is I'm able to really be in a situation of where people can feel comfortable talking about themselves. I listen. I'm really a people person from that perspective. I'm an introvert, but I get my energy learning about other people. And it's why I like to campaign. It's why I like to run grassroots campaigns. It is the greatest experience to be in different regions of the state, even red and purple parts of the state, where you meet just some really, really wonderful people who, at the end of the day, we all want the same thing. And because, we have political forces that have agendas that are more about dividing us and really playing to our fears, it's really wonderful to be able to have, those one-on-one conversations, to meet people, to listen, and to have them really share just such a wonderful part of themselves. My kryptonite is, oh gosh, I would say my kryptonite. So I have to fuel myself to keep doing this work, and so my kryptonite is staying healthy and learning how to eat healthy foods that you can prepare in less than 20 minutes. So that's my kryptonite. Ask my husband;
Nice.
he may disagree.
Okay. What do you do in your quiet time?
I love to read. I love spending time with my 102-year-old mom. And I actually do, in my quiet time, like to listen to music of all kinds, of all kinds. If I can shut off and just really clear my mind, it's my self-care time.
All right. And last question from me, and then you get a closing statement is what's something that you failed at, but what did it actually teach you?
Oh, that I failed at. I'm not a good swimmer. In fact, I'm a pretty big failure in swimming. Um, but what it actually taught me was just, how to overcome fear. Um, and the way that I overcome fear is to just confront it, just confront it. And to this day, I'm still not a good swimmer, but I'm comfortable in the water. But, sometimes I think fear is something that is placed on us rather than something that comes from within us. And we're sort of seeing a lot of that right now. The fact that, people are just feeling fearful about what's their future is going to look like. Well, look at who's setting the table for us. We haven't had a say in our future in terms of what we want. People are not investing in us. People are essentially, treating so many of us and so many of our communities as if we're disposable. And so what I think about, just kind of the harm that that's done over the long term, it really, it's hard to accept. But anyway, that's the end of that. Fear.
All right, flash round done. Flash round done. So thank you so much for allowing me to facilitate all these questions
Thank you,
at you.
Kimmy.
You're gonna get a closing statement right now, and then I pass it back to Jorge.
Okay, I appreciate that. So let me just say thank you to California Working Families Party for this opportunity, and thank you for the great coalition that you are. I look at all of my elections as really, the kind of coalitions that I can build to really carry out the work that we want to do together. And my belief has always been, given my background, that California is better off when we're all better off. And it starts with workers, right? And the strength lies in the dignity of our workers and the health of our communities and just the protection of the most vulnerable among us. And I've always believed that with respect to politics. And so when I told you that about my family's story and I had to be a fighter, I've learned early on, and it still is true, but I don't want this to be true. And that is we have to fight because nothing will be given and nothing will be easy. And so, hats off to so many Californians who every day get up with courage and with grit to figure out how to make it through another day when the odds are stacked against them. So, I've been proud to stand in the fight with working families all my life in all the offices in which I've served. And look, I'm the candidate who can claim to have been a state controller, to have been on the tax board, to have been a state budget director. But really, what this is about is that we need to have a different direction going forward. We need to have a direction of where this economy is about being an inclusive economy, not an economy that is built on oppressing, one segment of our community for the betterment of somebody else. and we can do this together. And why I run grassroots campaign is because this is how we organize to do this. And this is how I get people to invest in this vision of the future. And so, yes, my campaign is about how we're going to make California add up for all of us again. But I can tell you that when I become governor, I will have one foot squarely in the office in which I'm serving and the other foot in the community. And if they're moving in tandem, we're probably doing something right. So that's what we're going to deliver as governor. And I look forward to being on the ground with all of you. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I see my friend Jean in the background.
All right, well, thank you everybody for joining our 3 governor interviews. We have had thousands of Californians sign up in person and online to do this. Shout out to San Diego, Kern County, Central Coast, LA, San Francisco, and Oakland for our watch parties today, and all the other ones around the state. I do want to say that on Wednesday, this coming Wednesday, we're going to be doing a virtual rally with Congressman Ro Khanna, and we're going to have 2 of our amazing WFP champions join. One of them is future Congressman Randy Villegas, who is a longtime WFP champion, who is running against both the Democratic and Republican establishment in the biggest swing district in California. He is a longtime school board member in Visalia, who's showing that progressive politics can win in the Central Valley. And the other amazing candidate that will be there is Sacramento Councilmember Mai Vang, who is one of the few progressive voices in the Sacramento City Council who's running against an 80-year-old incumbent Democrat who has not held a town hall in years. And Mai Vang is a WFP champion who's going to fight for all of us. So meet both of those candidates on Wednesday with Congressman Ro Khanna for a virtual rally on Prop 50. And the other thing I'll say is we really need everybody here on this call to throw down. If you feel the urgency and you're fed up with the 2-party system, if you're fed up with a Democratic Party that led us twice to having Trumpism, there's a different way here in California. We have over 100 elected officials from everywhere in the state, from San Diego and National City and Imperial Beach, all the way up to the Oregon border, who are fighting to make sure that ICE is unmasked in San Jose, who is fighting AI rent bans in San Diego, and is fighting in our school boards in Santa Ana. So if you feel the urgency and you're fed up with the system, I'm asking you to become a dues-paying member of WFP so that we could continue to throw down for our candidates. And when we say we invest, all your money is going directly to candidates like Rachel Hernandez, who won her seat in Riverbank by a few percentage points, running against a longtime establishment incumbent. And Rachel won her seat and showed what true progressivism is, and shows what happens when WFP actually invests in your race. So if you could give $10 a month, I'm asking you to give $10 a month to California WFP. If you can't afford $10 a month, give $5 a month. That money goes directly to Rachel Hernandez. That goes directly to candidates like Randy Villegas and Visalia, and that goes directly to future Congresswoman Mai Vang, who is going to show that 80-year-old incumbents can't just keep their seat just because they want it. It's actually the power's in our hands. So if you believe in a future California, if you believe in a WFP that like we have now that has over 100 elected officials, 80% of them are people of color, most of them are young folks, and they look like candidates like Rachel Hernandez, please invest in us. It's just $10 a month or $5 a month to make it happen. And the last thing I'll say is if you want to continue this conversation and you want to talk with folks like yourselves around the state, join our Discord after show. Mayor Hernandez will be on there, and we'll have some of our member reps on there, so you could meet like-minded folks and continue the conversation on Discord. And the last thing I'll say is I know a lot of you are excited to go out to No Kings on Saturday, so please go out there to No Kings. Please make sure you tell everybody there to vote yes on Prop 50. Come to our rally on Wednesday, and we'll see you all soon. And I hope you all feel the urgency that I feel. And we need to break the 2-party system, and California WFP is the way that we're doing it right now. 125 electeds, we're going to have 250 by the end of next year if y'all continue to invest in us. So thank you so much.